the one, I guess it's good and bad that we do this so early because it's fresh, but at the same time, sometimes it's still a fresh wound.
Oh, yeah.
Does it feel like that to you? Because it feels like it feels like when I have to look up, not have to, but when I look up stats and look up the replays and things like that, the morning after a loss, it's very I don't know, it's hard. I should also
Yeah,
need
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah. Obviously, yeah, after a loss is a little different. Have to relive everything that happened and go through the key plays, and it's a little bit painful, but we'll get through it.
We'll get through it. Ready to start recording?
Yeah.
Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footies, Flyover Fallout. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always with Santiago Beltran, and we're here to recap, like we always are, match day 34 for St. Louis City. Unfortunately, it didn't go our way. 2-0 loss to Seattle Sounders, but there's a lot to look forward to. There's plenty to look back on that we're going to do first before getting too ahead of ourselves. Santi, how are you? How'd you see the match last night?
Doing great, doing great. This is the last flyover fallout of the regular season. So
Mm-hmm.
next time we record, we'll be talking about a postseason game. But no, I'm doing great. It's obviously a little disappointing after a loss. It's a little sad to end the regular season with a loss, but it's at the same time you have to celebrate what they did during the regular season. Clinch really early, secure first place also with 2 games left. So it's a little bit different. I think the intensity the last 2 games wasn't the same, and I know the players were trying, but at the same time it's difficult to get your head in the game when you don't have anything to fight for in those last 2 games. But let's talk about it.
True to that. And we're gonna do a full recap of more of the regular season on our full Flyover Footy show this Thursday. So if you are interested in more of a postmortem of the season itself, tune into that one. For now, Santi, let's get into the starting 11 like we usually do. Berkey starts in net, and then from there, it's kind of a you wanna pause for a second.
Yeah, I can mute it too, but Berkey. And now I'm yelling at Berkey.
I was hoping that's what it was.
Relax, relax.
It's all gonna be okay.
Okay, yeah, it looks like that dog is gone. All right, sorry about that.
All good. I'm gonna bring us in with the starting 11.
All right.
Yeah, it all started with the starting 11 that we would hope would see our best 11, so to speak. I think there's a few different iterations of what our best 11 can be, but this one had some surprises. So Berkey and net. It's funny how loud it is. The morning after a loss, everything just goes to chaos.
Sorry, she's always so calm, but I don't know.
She saw the record button. That's what it was.
All right, let's try again. Okay, hold on 1 second.
Okay. Poor Berkey. Poor Berkey. This is why streaming is fun. Doing this live and then having Berkey bark at us because she did not like what she saw last night. Santi will be right back for anybody looking at us on Twitter or YouTube. And we just started, so nobody missed anything if you're interested in the morning after recap.
Okay, back.
All right, dive into the starting 11. Yeah, and looking at our starting 11, Santi, we were hoping to see one of our best 11. I think we have a few different versions of what that could look like. So you mentioned coming off of a long break, we had international duties. So what we saw, I think, I don't know that a lot of people could really argue this was our absolute best 11, but I think it's what Carnell saw as best 11 of what we had available that he chose to use. There's one notable absence that we'll get to, but it started with Berkey and net like we expected. Anthony Markanic, Joakim Nilsson, Tim Parker, Jake Nerwinski made up our back line. Akil Watts, Jabulu Blom were more of a double pivot. You had Edu Leuven and AZ Jackson as dual tens, I would say, and ended up playing kind of wide. Nico Gioacchini and Klaus up top. So you see Akil Watts back in the starting lineup. You see Nico Gioacchini return to the starting lineup. And other than that, it's kind of business as usual. But before I see what you thought of the lineup, I do have a quote from Bradley Carnell post game regarding Indiana Vassilev, because that was the biggest question with conversations leading into the game about his national team duties and how that impacted his availability for Saturday. Carnell said, quote, "One thing you don't know, Indy had a problem in the national camp. He had a problem with his calf muscle that kept him out of the first game. He played 30 minutes, managed minutes, and load, and we had to do the same thing. So we just weren't sure because of Indy's arrival how long he could go and didn't have time to assess. We just took a cautious approach." So long term, because we saw Indy come in the second half, I would hope that this isn't a concern, especially since we look to have a little bit more of a week off. But it was unfortunate that I think Indy couldn't go. And because Indy couldn't go, or they kept him out rather, that
Mm-hmm.
was a little bit of a cascade effect. And I think that's obviously why Akil Watts was in the starting lineup. And it did not, to me, it did not go nearly as well as anybody would have hoped. What did you think about the starting 11?
Yeah, so back to Indy, he when he came in, he looked good. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully he will be okay for the playoff game. But yeah, very competitive starting 11. Obviously, you have to adjust a little bit because Indy couldn't go from the beginning. But having Blom and Akil Watts, I think was a good plan to contain Seattle. And I like the 4-2-2-2. But obviously Seattle, they play a good game and were able to find some spaces and pass the ball quickly when they needed to, and get the ball behind our defenders.
That's the thing. You saw with the passing network a big difference in the defensive midfield from the way that they defended to the way that they brought the ball out. I think there was I've got a stat at the end of the game when we finish our game flow that kind of looks to I would argue kind of the ineffectiveness of Blom and Watts in progressing the ball, and at least the juxtaposition against Seattle, because we know that Seattle played a different game. They have a different style, a different approach, but when you're having this kind of a matchup of clashing styles where we're more direct, we're more over the top, we make quicker, longer passes, and they are more trying to play the ball out of themselves. They might make a lot of short passes. They leverage their defensive midfield a lot more than we did. And I think this is really relevant to the passing network in our buildup, especially in the first half, where you do have a lot of the ball going through Parker and Nilsson, but Watts is kind of more on an island. He really did not have much of an involvement in the attack, in the offense. And it's almost like a missing piece in the field where you're kind of just you're at a disadvantage because the area of the field that Watts was patrolling, the ball wasn't progressing at all. So you moved it through Nerwinski, you moved it through Markanic, who was playing high over near Edu Leuven. And I feel like that's just a missed opportunity. And whether you say it's because of Akil Watts or whether you say it's just because of the positioning and what Seattle was doing, I think either way, it was just something that Seattle was able to neutralize from what City was throwing at them.
Yeah, it's weird to see a kilowatts isolated in the passing network. So yeah, Seattle had a good game, and in the end, having that double pivot with Watts and that Bull of Blom didn't go the way we expected it to go.
Yeah, and Bradley Carnell said in the first half, when you're looking at how the game started versus how it progressed, he said, "Yeah, even though it was a tight game, not too many chances. You could argue that we had the better chances early on in the game, but against a team like this who don't give much away, you have to take chances. You have to take the moments that are awarded to us and the opportunities given. So unfortunately, we didn't do that. And the early chances, Klaus at 2 minutes, he had a shot. AZ at 5 minutes, he had a shot after a Leuven free kick. There were there. The chances were there. Now." high percentage chances, maybe not as much, and that was a prevailing thought throughout the game. But we had a lot of corners early. We had a lot of those moments that we couldn't take advantage of. And when you're playing the style that City does, we harp on this all the time. Carnell mentions it all the time, reinforcing it, that if you don't take these opportunities, you don't take these moments and these chances, then against a team like Seattle or LAFC that we've seen, it's going to bite you. And when you're not given that many chances, especially early in the first half, Seattle has an opportunity to change things really quickly. Was there anything notable that you saw before Seattle got on the scoreboard?
Yeah, so those first 5 minutes were all City on Seattle's end of the field, and one thing that caught my attention on the set pieces and the corner kicks early in the game, it was Leuven going to the first post looking for AC, which almost worked on that chance that Klaus ended up missing. It was a header from AC, and then Stefan Frey couldn't secure it, and on the rebound Klaus couldn't finish, and then AC like 2 minutes later had another one. He had a header, and then Stefan Frey was able to control it. But the few chances City created, Stefan Frey had a great game, and he had like two or three key saves during the game that kept the game scoreless, or like avoided City's equalizer when Seattle went up.
And in the first half, especially, St. Louis actually had more shots on target. And I know a
Hmm.
lot of those came early, and we were dominating possession in the first 5 minutes, actually 75-25. And so a lot of those were leading to chances. Unfortunately, that Stefan Frey came up big and we couldn't capitalize. So then it led to the 23-minute mark, where I would argue that this was really Seattle's only best shot. And I mean that not to say that the second goal, I think the way that the goals built, obviously the second one what it is the first one is more quintessential St. Louis defensive deficiency to me. So setting the stage for that first goal, 23 minutes in, there's a big switch in their own zone. Seattle played the ball left to right, and they did this a few times in the game with these big, heavy switches. The ball was played left to right to Alex Roldan. He was then possessing the ball in their defensive half, right near midfield, kind of drawing in Jabulu Blom and Edu Leuven. Once he drew them in, he played the ball between the two, got it over to Christian Roldan, and Josh Atencio was over there on the right wing as well. They played the ball off of each other effectively. I think it's no
Hmm.
argument there. Right back to a cutting Christian Roldan as he's going into the right channel. Roldan's making the move as high as he can, plays the ball over to Jordan Morris really quickly, but Tim Parker has the slide tackle that prevents Morris from doing anything. Unfortunately, the ball landed back at Roldan's feet. He gets deep in the channel, really high up on the field, and he's unguarded in the box. Anthony Markanic was higher near Tim Parker, playing that defensive press. And then Christian Roldan passed the ball back into the middle. And if you go look at the replay, you can see that there's just a defensive lapse. And this highlights a lot of what St. Louis's problems are in the transition defense, because you have Akil Watts, one of the double pivots, stepping up into Roldan over in that right channel. Nerwinski was deep centrally. Joachim Nielsen was in the middle of the box, but there was nobody on the other side, nobody behind the players. You had Jabulu Blom outside of the box. You had Leuven, Parker outside the box. And so when the ball was played over to Albert Rusnak, he had an open lane for a shot. And that's where St. Louis gets stretched. They get drawn out. And when Rusnak shot the ball, it was a great shot. It got past Berkey's lower right. But when you give space to a player as talented as Albert Rusnak, he's going to make you pay. And that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, and even the build up of that play, trying to draw City and create a space and quick passes. I think Seattle did that a few times, and I think they figure out that those quick passes and trying to go behind the back was going to work against City, and on that play, the quick switch from left to right, and then quick passes between 2 3 players, they were able to create the space needed for Roldan to get that cross to Rusnak. But yeah, that was a good build up. But as you said, it highlights some of the deficiencies at times that the team has defensively.
And unfortunately, I think that is exhibit A of being unable to figure out Seattle in their offense. This is our second loss against the Sounders, and being the only team to defeat St. Louis City twice in MLS play this year, we just didn't have an answer for that type of an offense. And it was a moment. They had a few opportunities, but this was a moment where it was done to perfection. And if you give Seattle enough of those chances, they're going to take advantage of at least one of them. That's what we saw here. After that, we did have some more moments from City. And so there were 3 moments in the first half where City was more dominating possession. And it occurred at the beginning of the game. It occurred between the goals and right before half. Between the goals, I think you saw Jabulu Blom had a great shot at 29 minutes. It was a frozen rope from outside the box off an Anthony Markanek shot deflection. That was one of those opportunities where you could easily see Minnesota United replay of Jabulu Blom having that really worldy goal that he'd been working on, that exact shot from distance that we've seen from him often. Unfortunately, it couldn't find net. And then the Tim Parker own goal happened, or Reed Baker Whiting goal, however you want to look at it. I think this was different from the first goal to me, Santi, because I didn't see as much of a defensive lapse at all. I actually saw this as the most unfortunate turn of events because it was a turnover from Leuven in the midfield, but the team was building and they hadn't yet pressed high. And so you still had numbers back. And so Leuven was trying to play it to either AZ or Akil. Reed Baker Whiting took the ball through the left channel, played it over to Leo Chu, and then Baker Whiting kind of didn't stop. He kept making his run there through the left channel, and we had numbers defensively. And so Tim Parker took him on near the end line. And unfortunately, whenever I don't know if he was attempting to put the ball on net actually, or just cross it over to Jordan Morris, but Parker got his right foot on it, and it was just enough to change the direction over Berkey to get it past him at a tough angle. And I think the worst part about that to me isn't just the unfortunate touch from Parker, but it's that defensively, I felt we were in a good position there. I don't feel we would have given up a goal had it not been for that unfortunate touch. And because we had 6 in the box at that time, they had 5. Nobody was really in near our deeper defensive players. You had Jordan Morris in behind, and I think that's who Reed Baker Whiting was trying to find. But it was a well-played defensive play by City that it was just one of those unfortunate moments. I do have the fun fact of this one, which is not fun in the slightest, but the fact is that after this goal, it was the final goal that happened for City in the regular season. Tim Parker has the benefit or the luxury and the unfortunate pleasure of being the player to score the first and the last goal of City's regular season. And if you remember the highest of highs at Austin FC, the lowest of lows happened right there with Parker's own goal.
Yeah, but it was an unfortunate play. I think Baker Whiting was trying to cross it and just an unfortunate bounce and ended up going into the net. But Baker Whiting had a good run, and I was gonna say that on the 2 games against Seattle, first game at Seattle, Joao Paulo wasn't available, and Josh Atencio, a young player who now is a regular starter, ended up replacing him and made a difference in that game. And then last night, Nuhu didn't start because he had a long travel. He was with Cameroon's national team, and then Reed, like Baker Whiting, ended up having a good game. And even if he wasn't trying to shoot, he had a good run and created the play. So 2 young players that at the moment weren't regular starter ended up making the difference in both games.
Second half saw a little bit of a different look from City, and I think it was partly the tactical decisions that Carnell made at half, including the substitutes, bringing in Jared Stroud, Indiana Vasilev for Akil Watson, Jabula Blom. But also Seattle played a lot more defensive minded. They were not as willing to take chances. They were a lot more inviting of St. Louis. And so where you saw the first half possession skew towards Seattle, you saw the second half possession actually skew a lot towards St. Louis City, so much so that Seattle led in the first half possession 56-44. St. Louis, as we described what happened in the second half, ended up leading in possession 62%-38. This was a vastly different second half. And Carnell even said that he liked the energy in the second half. Post-game, he said He said that along with saying that's the standard we want to set for the season, especially here at City Park. We have to put our hand up and say the first half wasn't good enough. The second half, we're in the game. We woke up a little bit in that second half. We really stood for what we believed in and showed it in certain moments. So that's all he can ask. He goes on to say, then you can see the guys start to get rewarded in their brave actions, but unfortunately, it was a little bit too late. And actually, I thought it was kind of interesting that that was his comment post game, because at the beginning of the second half, Seattle started early. You had opportunities that Leo Chu really started with a shot past Berkey. And to me, this was the save of the game.
That was awesome.
With Tim Parker. Tim Parker, as much as, and my wife was mentioning that it seemed like he made up for whatever happened in the first half, because this was easily a Parker save. He was the only man back behind Berkey. Berkey took his chance to go out after Leo Chu. Parker in net, nobody behind him, made the save to clear the ball. That was great to see. And I think that could have provided the spark to keep us going, because shortly after that, you had AZ Jackson getting a shot at 49 from inside the box. To me, possibly our greatest chance to score a goal. That it was kind of one of those seeing eye shots at pretty close range. AZ then had another chance a few minutes later, play in a through ball from Nico Gioacchini in the left channel. So you're seeing build-up play start to occur. Unfortunately, we weren't able to capitalize. And I think because we weren't able to capitalize, the game kind of started to get back into a flow. And it wasn't a flow that we were really comfortable with. It was a very possession-based flow for us. Seattle said, take the ball. You try to beat us. We're going to drop back. We don't need to move forward. And then it didn't take until 65 minutes for another chance that was really big in the game, where Christian Roldan had a long shot after another big switch. You're seeing Seattle take some of those opportunities that they did in the first half when they were afforded them, but they didn't need to take too many. Right after that, you had Nico Gioacchini going down in the box. And I'm curious what your thought on this one is, because I saw it, seeing it live. Obviously, you think, okay, that's a penalty, and it was called a penalty, and you don't think anything of it. And then it goes to VAR. They end up overturning it. What happened was Nico Gioacchini was trying to step back on the ball because he was facing the wrong direction, receiving a pass, trying to recover the ball, step over it, turn it back. There was contact from Christian Roldan, but clearly at the end of the day, there wasn't enough contact to maintain the penalty call. What I saw after this game, and kind of in the comments in the second half, was a lot of fans seem to have a disdain for what Gioacchini did here. And I kind of get it, because you see it. There's a purveying thought with soccer of flopping and not trying to draw fouls that aren't there and going down easily. Jared Stroud caught some flack on some of the comments for what he did at the end of the game. But these are moments that can change the game, and you're trying to do your best to get calls. Every sport does it. Every player does it. Every high-level player is good at doing it. Nico Gioacchini has done it successfully in the past. So when Gioacchini went down here, it was clearly a moment where he was close to drawing a foul. And the key thing here to me is that this would have been a penalty. Gioacchini knew exactly where he was in the box. And so you're looking at this as a play of Gioacchini had three players around him, and he probably saw his best percentage chance for a positive outcome being draw the contact, go down, earn the penalty, get a goal back. It was not something I feel Gioacchini would have done if he was outside the box, because that would not have been near the same game changer. If it was close, maybe trying to draw a free kick, but this isn't something you see at midfield. This is a tactical decision Gioacchini made, knowing there's three players around him, and it's likely he's either going to be dispossessed or go down on contact. I didn't see too much wrong with it. I understand some of the feedback. What did you think about that?
Yeah, it's part of the game, but when the ref when the ref blew the whistle, I actually thought that he had to stop the game to give Joaquini a yellow card for simulation. So I was so confused, and then oh yeah, it's penalty. But yeah, I saw the replay, and yeah, there was a very slight contact, but I don't think it was enough for a penalty. And Leuven said it post game. He was like, to be honest, that wasn't a penalty. But he said, yeah, you have to find those moments and hope that maybe that will be a PK, and then you can take a turn and change the game. But yeah, to me it wasn't a PK, and yeah, I understand people who get frustrated with it, but as you were saying, he had three players on him, and that was probably his best chance, and there was some contact, and he went for it. Unfortunately, VAR ended up overturning that decision.
And I can see it both ways for Gioacchini. He often finds himself in this position comparatively to other players like Klaus and Sam. And you see Gioacchini have these moments and these opportunities to try and draw fouls in this way, partially because of just the way he plays, his positioning on the field. He ends up in traffic a lot more, whether it's underneath or trying to draw players in, as opposed to like a line breaking striker like Klaus or Sam, who gets into open space a little bit more. And so, style of play, what they're asked to do on the field, that plays into opportunities that they have. But then the flip side is referees are familiar with what Gioacchini does, and so I do think there is a little bit more of an eye towards, okay, we have to be careful about giving him these calls. He doesn't earn the benefit of the doubt as a player like Klaus or Sam might, because they don't often put themselves in those positions.
Yeah, and I think like early in the season, like when the referees weren't familiar with Joaquini, like yeah, he would get a lot of those calls, but now they're gonna look at those closely, and last night ended up being overturned by VAR.
So the game ended 2-0. We didn't go home happy like we wanted to. We didn't end up with as many of the accolades as we wanted to. But before we get into what the club has accomplished, and as we go forward, I mentioned earlier the passing network kind of had some interesting factors to look at. And I do think these are takeaways as well, because it's not just analyzing the Seattle game and what went wrong, but it's looking at when you play a team like Seattle that you may face in the playoffs, you have to understand what went wrong and how you can either change your tactics, better utilize players, or go in a completely different formation. Because now this is the second vastly different formation and approach that we took to Seattle. The first game had the 3 center back, 5 in the back look. This one was more of a vertical 4-2-2-2, and in doing that, you're leaving your defensive players in uh, a very strong position to have to take ownership to connect the lines. I mentioned we didn't do that very well. Akil Watts only had 5 of 7 pass completions this entire game. Playing as double pivot with Blom, who had 16 of 19 pass completions, this was a game where the ball was played entirely from our center backs to our wings. You had Tim Parker, Joachim Nilsson, Edu Leuven, Anthony Markanek, and Jake Nerwinski, our center backs, our fullbacks, our higher midfielders, all leading in passing. And you compare this to what Seattle did with Joao Paulo and Josh Atencio. So you look at Watts with his 5 passes, Blom with his 16. Paulo and Atencio had 37 and 31 passes, respectively. The ball was played entirely through their midfield. And this furthered me feeling like I was watching the game with no connections. And so you're looking at if they didn't pass the ball, then maybe they took those opportunities and they received the ball and they carried it up to progress the ball up the field. That didn't happen either. Blom and Watts were the lowest on the team in the number of carries, which is the stat that has controlling the ball at your feet for a period of time, just in general, turning, controlling the ball, and doing something with it. It's not saying you have to go 10 yards, it's just controlling it. Blom had 6, Watts had 3 carries. These are lowest on the entire team. Compare it to Edu Leuven, Tim Parker, Joachim Nilsson, AZ Jackson, and Jake Nerwinski. Again, center backs, fullbacks, attacking mids, all had greater than 20 carries. So you're seeing how the ball was almost avoiding our midfield in just about every way. And again, comparing it to Paulo and Atencio, who both had more than 20 carries. This ability for Seattle to connect their lines and the deficiency St. Louis had in the midfield in general, in almost working around it through the fullbacks and through the attacking mids who were playing wide, is definitely a takeaway that I think Carnell has to look at when you're approaching a team like Seattle, or even a high caliber team in general. So I don't know how it's going to play into San Jose and Sporting Kansas City, because both of them play different styles, and I think that's not as pertinent of a factor. But this is a long-term concern when you're looking at possibly moving on into the playoffs and who you might play after that. Paulo and Atencio allowed themselves to start in a deeper position. It helped their numbers defensively, which was a factor in a lot of what St. Louis was doing, because looking at the game, Santi, you often found like, how is Seattle able to have so many players deep defensively against us where we're not able to create chances because they outnumber us? And then also when they progress the ball into their attacking third and get into these transition moments, it's the exact opposite. We're finding ourselves outnumbered. How are they able to do this? And the answer is very clearly Paulo and Atencio.
Yeah, they definitely made a difference. I was excited when I saw the lineup, and Leuven wasn't part of that double pivot, and I saw he's gonna have more of an offensive role. But yeah, the connection for Watts and Blom wasn't there. So maybe for future games, maybe Leuven will be part of that double pivot, or maybe we will see that diamond formation again. But yeah, I'm sure the team will make adjustments for the playoffs. Even if it is like, regardless of who the opponent is between Sporting and San Jose, I think there will be adjustments made thinking about the playoffs, and hopefully Indy will be back healthy and will be in consideration to start some of those games.
Yeah, we now have a week break and we have no international obligations. So this is as much of a reset as anything else, with no distractions, no outside things going on. But as we look forward, there is a lot to celebrate about this team and their final accomplishments for the regular season. And like I said, we're going to do a deeper dive of the regular season in how it went overall, probably on our wind down this Thursday for Flyover Footy's big show. But St. Louis does finish the regular season with the third most goals, the third best goal difference, the third most interceptions, and the third most wins in all of MLS this season. 62 goals scored, plus 17 goal differential, 356 interceptions, and 17 wins. The team's first season, St. Louis City becomes the first expansion team in MLS history to win their conference. It's another accomplishment that we can look back on when the season's over and say this is one of those hallmark things, adding to the hopeful, successful resume of a guy like Bradley Carnell for Coach of the Year. City has 17 wins on the season, like I said, and they've set the record for the most wins by an expansion team in MLS history, excluding the shootout era, because God bless the Chicago Fire and their expansion team. City did finish with 62 goals. They joined LAFC, Atlanta, and the Chicago Fire as the only expansion sides to do that in their debut seasons. The team had their plus 17 goal differential. It did tie the Chicago Fire for the second highest goal difference by an expansion team in MLS history, trailing only Atlanta United's incredible plus 30 goal differential in their first year. City finished this year with 11 home wins. That's important to know going into the playoffs. 11 home wins ties Atlanta United in 2017 for the most home wins by an expansion team in MLS history, excluding the shootout era. And then don't forget, as we look way ahead, we have secured the top seed in the Western Conference, and we've also secured a spot in the 2024 CONCACAF Champions Cup. So a lot of exciting things that we can eventually look back on and say, wow, this was the year that we all hoped it would be. But for now, we're kind of in that transition trenches, right? Going into the playoffs.
Yeah, now you have that playoff mindset. When the team lost against Vancouver, my first thought was, "Hey, this is a good loss. It will allow the team to reset, get ready for decision day." But it's hard to play when you don't have anything on the line. And Berkey said it on his post game remarks, like yeah, we did our best, but it's just like we like when you have anything on the line, your mind may not be fully there, but it will allow the team to reset again. And like this loss, especially against a playoff team that you may see, Seattle ended up in second place of the conference, so
Yes.
potentially these teams could meet again in the conference final. And yeah, I'm sure the team will look back at the last couple of games and just get ready for the winner between Sporting and San Jose. So yeah, it's not good to end up with back-to-back losses, but at the same time, it will allow the team to look at things closely, make some adjustments to correct some of those mistakes, and get ready for the next game.
If you're looking for positives to take away as far as how the team has responded in the past to losses like this, I would only be able to point to back in April, where after our 5-0 start, Minnesota defeated St. Louis 1-0, and Seattle defeated St. Louis 3-0 back to back. It was the only time before now that St. Louis has lost back to back MLS matches. And the way they responded to that afterwards was the 5-1 win over FC Cincinnati. So you're seeing the only time St. Louis has had to deal with back to back losses in MLS play like this, where they had been shut out in those games, has been, they responded well. And you're seeing, I think, an opportunity to go forward, having been shut out now 2 in a row, just like we were in April, for St. Louis to face another high caliber team like we did against FC Cincinnati and show this ability to bounce back again. To me, this is different in both times we've lost multiple games in a row. The shutouts in April and then the times in June because of the injury considerations. So April, to me, we had all of our attacking options present from Klaus and Leuven. June, we were missing both of them. And so being able to bounce back in those ways is going to be important going forward. Before we look ahead to who we might play and before we look ahead to the overall MLS climate, and really quick, I do want to mention something that was interesting. It happened post game. I think a lot of people might have missed it because it was after everybody left. It was not on the broadcast, but it's worth spotlighting. And it was something that the supporters are calling Bricks Giving. Post game after the match, the club came over like they usually do to the supporters section in the North End. Bradley Carnell had some words of thanks and praise to the supporters for everything that they're doing. And then the supporters invited him and the team over to their wall. I will read from Fleur de Noise's Twitter account. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. In what occurred from the players to the club, it says, "The brick you received this evening played a significant role in shaping the fabric of St. Louis as we know it. In 1849, after a devastating fire that destroyed large parts of the city, St. Louis emerged from the ashes even stronger and more resilient, thanks to bricks made from the abundant red clay beneath our feet. From the homes of many neighborhoods like Old North and Benton Park, to the sturdy walls of the brewery, that fire paved the way for the iconic brick buildings that make up our city. Bricks are deeply woven into the fabric of St. Louis as we know it today. You, this team, are now a part of that fabric. From the historic start of the season to the many highs that followed, your active involvement in our community through youth soccer initiatives, neighborhood cleanups, and more embodies what it means to be a St. Louisan. This brick symbolizes our deep appreciation for this inaugural season and represents what has come thus far and what we can build in the future, brick by brick." What do you think, Santi?
That's amazing. It's great to see that recognition from the supporter groups to the players. Great season and breaking records and finishing first. I really like that moment and yeah, I was hoping more people will stay for that. Obviously, after a loss, people are disappointed
Yeah.
and want to go home and not in celebration mode. But hey, you had to celebrate the accomplishments of the season and the team make a point on thanking the fans last night, and even on the high video, it was all about the fans, and it's a great touch that Bradley Carnell also had some remarks for the fans. So yeah, that was a great moment, and I asked Edu Leuven post game, and he said, yeah, it's been very special to have all the support from the fans this year, and I'm gonna leave you with this. Bradley Carnell on his remarks, he said, "Thank you for all the support. We will need you in the playoffs."
Truer words cannot be spoken. It was as uplifting of a moment as you could hope for after that match occurred. And you're right, not everybody was in the greatest of mindsets, but it's something that you almost have to do because the players, the team have earned it, and you can't let you have to look at the forest through the trees, right? You can't let the immediate downfall or the immediate setback rather hamper all of that, because all of those things are deserved and appropriate. But then you do have to pivot pretty quickly to playoff mindset. And I thought Edu Leuven actually said it pretty well post game when he's talking about what the playoffs are like. And he said that we know that in the playoffs, it's a whole different thing. I've never played in a playoff, but I treat this as kind of a German Cup mentality in one game where everything can happen because it's only one game. Like I said, it doesn't matter that the whole season before what happened, on what spot you entered the season. So we know in this situation, every team can make it to the final. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. But what St. Louis is going to have to face, because the regular season has now come to an end, is one of San Jose or Sporting Kansas City. The MLS Western Conference has completed, just like the season, and the way that this shakes out after St. Louis wins the conference is, like you said, Santi, Seattle Sounders have finished second with 53 points, 3 points back from St. Louis. LAFC and Houston follow them in third and fourth, meaning those teams have secured home field in the first round. Real Salt Lake, Vancouver Whitecaps, FC Dallas are 5, 6, and 7, and 8 and 9, as we've been watching for feels like forever now, shook out to be Sporting Kansas City in 8th and the San Jose Earthquakes in 9th. The Portland Timbers, who started decision day in 7th place, are now on the outside looking in. They get to watch the rest of this season from their couches, having finished 10th with 43 points.
Yeah, Portland Timbers, who like 3 weeks ago were looking like a team that nobody could stop and maybe nobody wanted to face in the playoffs, ended up falling apart in the last two games. It's interesting that Houston beat them 5-0, like 10 match days ago or
Mm-hmm.
so. So that resulted in Gio Savaresi getting fired, and then with the new coach, they put together some good performances, won a few games, put themselves back in playoff position, and then the same Houston Dynamo that beat them 5-0 ended their season last night.
You got to love the poetry in that regard. But what matters for St. Louis going forward are the San Jose Earthquakes and Sporting KC. They're going to play each other on Wednesday night, and it looks to be an 8:30 start Central Time. But both of these teams have their own pros and cons to who you really want to face. I think what you look to as they play each other in Kansas is going to be that St. Louis has defeated the Quakes twice this year, home and away, and we're 2-1 against SKC, both of those wins coming at home. So when you look at a first round that's going to be a best of 3, home, away, and then home if necessary, that's going to be important to remember is our ability to handle SKC at home and our overall quality against the San Jose Earthquakes. The way that they entered the playoffs were San Jose drew Austin on Saturday night. Sporting KC kind of whopped Minnesota 3-1. And they enter the playoffs on a little bit more momentum building, a little bit more of a higher note, having won 3 of their last 4. Their one loss, though, obviously the St. Louis City game in City Park, 4-1 loss for SKC. Peter Vermes, though, post-game, I don't know if you saw what his comments were post-game, but it was almost like he was on a victory tour where he was really letting the media have it in Kansas on their lack of trust, lack of faith in his ability and the organization's ability to get them this far. And I did see some pushback by their fans, credit to these fans, who did notice that you shouldn't, if you're in the shoes of Peter Vermes and Sporting KC, the storied club with all these expectations, you shouldn't be dunking on anybody by just squeaking into the playoffs on decision day. Yes, you started the season terrible, and it was a great rise from your ashes, so to speak. But the expectations for that team internally in Kansas City are a lot higher. And so I think Vermes' next few matches, if he gets the next few matches, are going to be important to watch. And what St. Louis has shown both of these teams, San Jose and Kansas City, really leads me to think that this, personally, I would rather face San Jose. But with Sporting KC having been beaten twice already at City Park, there is that aspect of they don't seem to have an ability to win. I'm personally not a fan of playing a team 5 or 6 times, rival or not, in any given season. There's too much familiarity there. There's too much chaos that can occur. And in these playoff matches, there's no extra time. It goes until the end of 90, and then it goes to PKs. And so if you're going to leave that up to chance against, to be fair, Roman Berkey's one shortcoming this year have been PKs. He's never been strong at PKs. It's not his style. It's not what he's best at. And so I personally don't want to leave anything to chance in that regard with a team that you clearly know very well, as opposed to San Jose Earthquakes, who we've shown 2 different ways we've been able to beat them home and away. That matchup, aside from the travel factor of going all the way out to the West Coast for the second game, provides me a little more comfortability in what we'd be able to throw at them.
Yeah, San Jose is definitely the preferred opponent for me. Out of the possible 5 before decision day, I was like any of the 4, but Sporting Kansas. But it looks like it's gonna be that way because yeah, it's one game between Kansas and San Jose. But if you think about the momentum of both teams, Kansas is coming on a high note, while San Jose, yeah, they made it to the playoffs, but they didn't have a good last 3-4 weeks of the season, and basically they're on a downtrend. So, but yeah, maybe they will regroup and get the win at Kansas, and then City will play San Jose, which based on playing style is a better matchup. But we will find out on Wednesday night. I'm sure we will be watching.
Bradley Carnell had a quote post game that I really enjoyed, and it was basically you can take what's happened, and he spoke about this in context of their game, but he was saying basically you can take what happened, you can spin whatever narrative you want to, and I think that does apply. You can spin whatever story, whichever way you want to this potential playoff opponent, because yes, you did mention that San Jose is in much less of a form than Sporting KC. At the same time, despite the fact that San Jose hasn't won since about September 18th or so, they've drawn all 4 of their last 4 games. And the ability that San Jose has to pull out those kind of results speak to my worry of going into PK situations. So you could go for the home run where you've seen some really dominating performances against Sporting Kansas City. You could deal with the familiarity factor, or you can go to the point that, yes, San Jose hasn't been overwhelming to anybody, but they've been able to nudge along to kind of drag themselves across the finish line for these draws. And if they do that against City, it's anyone's guess on what could happen for PKs.
Yeah. Both of them will be difficult opponents, but the team has home field advantage, and I think that will end up making the difference in that 3-game series.
And we should have more details about City's first round match itself, the date and time coming as we record this Sunday morning, coming Sunday. And if it does come as we hope, I'll add a little bit in for our podcast listeners to make sure that everyone's up to speed on when we're going to play and what time, what day. For now, the rumor is next Sunday at either 7 or 9 p.m. And Santi, you have to think that with Seattle or LAFC having home field, also it does bode well for a potential 7 o'clock matchup, as Houston Dynamo are the only other hosting team. So no matter whether MLS decides to do a split Saturday, Sunday for those 4 matches or everything on Sunday for the Western Conference, 2 and 2 makes a lot of sense for Central and Western time zones.
So yeah, hopefully the 7 p.m. I know a lot of people won't be happy with a 9 p.m. game on Sunday, but it will still be a full stadium supporting the team. But yeah, we'll find out more soon, hopefully, and get ready for Sunday, assuming it is Sunday as the rumor around there said it.
And that's all for us today. Looking ahead at what we had, it's been fun to look back a little bit, but I'm excited to turn this chapter to get into playoff mindset. And we'll be back again this Thursday night to stream our full Flyover Footy, where, like I said, not only will we have a preview for whoever we'll end up facing between Sporting KC, the San Jose Earthquakes. We're going to look into that match in order to preview what St. Louis is going to face. We'll have information on the date and time. Full preview of that, along with a look back at our regular season and so much more. Santi, thanks for joining me. We're Flyover Footy, and if you like what you're listening to, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us out. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and tell a friend, because that's how you grow these kind of things. And we have fun doing this every post-match day and looking ahead on our previews. For now, we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, we'll see you in the playoffs. Vamos City!